Thank you for joining us for another fantastic Dynamo Thoughts. We have been having such a good time making these. We're getting lots of views, which
hmm
is helping our self-esteem.
hmm
I think we're
The
up to
compliments are helping our self-esteem too.
the compliments are helping our self-esteem. So right now we're getting paid on self-esteem. So please give us more self-esteem. Today, I have asked Ian to show us how to do something I've always wanted to do inside of Revit, which is track areas. So, as we move along in the different design phases of the project, areas start to creep and go up, or they start to creep and go down, and then your costs for
hmm
the building start to change. And then you get that nice conversation of why is it so much larger, or why is my building so much more expensive? And we can then go to a schedule and say, look, during this phase, you increased it this big. During this phase, it increased this big. When we changed this happened, kind of a thing. So
hmm
just sort of have a running total of the areas and create that total whenever we want. And Ian said, sure, I can do that. So let's go ahead and get started and see how this is done. So, Ian, let's get started.
Of course, you're welcome. I was excited when you proposed this workflow because it's actually going to cover one of the most important techniques that you need to understand if you're going to use Dynamo while working in Revit. And that's the concept of reading and writing parameter values. So even if you started watching this video and you think, oh, I'm not going to want to track my areas as they change over time, that's okay. There's still something for you if you plan on using Dynamo for Revit. You're going to learn how to read parameters of Revit elements using Dynamo, and you can write parameter values. So that's the fundamental underlying Dynamo technique that we're going to cover today.
I am ready to take notes so that I can do this yet again.
All right, here we go. I'm going to fire up our sample architecture project that ships with Revit 2017. And the first thing that I'm going to do is, interestingly enough, that does not come with a room schedule. So I'm actually going to create a new room schedule by right-clicking on Schedules and Quantities. We'll do a new schedule, and we're going to be tracking the rooms in this project. Scroll down to rooms. We'll create a new room schedule. And because this is an out-of-the-box kind of training tool from Autodesk, the phases are a little bit funny. If you're following along with this data set, you'll want to set the phase to working drawings. But if you're working in your project, you probably have new construction, or if you're working with phases, you'll want to pick the phase of the rooms that you're working with. So in order to create a new schedule, we have to define which fields we're going to be scheduling. So these are the room parameters in the project. We'll start with the room number. We're interested in seeing room names. And of course, most importantly, perhaps, are the room areas, because we're going to see those areas change over the course of the project. So I'll click OK. And now we've got our brand new room schedule. I'm also going to sort those by their room number.
Okay.
So that we see the rooms on the first floor all start with the number 1, and then rooms on the second floor start with the number 2. And of course, this is the residential sample file. So we're starting with a smaller data set than you're probably working with, just so that it's easier for you to follow along on whatever screen you're watching. So here's what our first floor looks like, our second floor, and we'll come back to these floor plans in just a minute. But for now, let's head back over to the room schedule that we just created. So Bill, if I'm understanding properly, what we're interested in doing is probably creating one or a series of new parameters to the right of this schedule
Correct.
as a way of kind of taking a snapshot of what those areas are at any given point in the project, right?
Correct.
Okay, I'll head back to our fields tab of the schedule properties, and we'll create a brand new parameter from inside the schedule. So let's pretend we're at the end of, I don't know, 100% schematic design. So we've done our basic layout for this house, and we're interested in preserving what those areas are, so that whatever happens during design development, we could always come back and look at this schedule and see what was the area of any given room at the end of 100% schematic design. I don't have that parameter created just yet. I'm going to click on the new parameter button and define it here. So we'll call this, maybe we'll call this area SD for schematic design.
Great. Good name.
And this will be an area parameter instead of a length. I'll group it under, I don't know, it kind of falls under the data category. And everything else here looks good. So I'll click OK. And I'll go OK one more time. And now we've got our new column. So of course we could do this for, I don't know, for the entire project. We could do 50% DD, 100% DD, all the way through the time that the building is completely
Right.
finished.
Or it could be a date of a meeting.
It could be all kinds of things, right?
It could be all sorts of things, right?
Right. Could be the day that the building comes down if we're going to hand over this Revit model to the facilities management team. But yeah, exactly. Right. This could be anything. So for now, we'll just create this one parameter.
Or the day you got a new dog. Doesn't really matter.
The day you have a baby and there's an area changes from a bedroom to a nursery.
Right, all sorts of things. Maybe that'll be another one where we do the name. It's the same kind of concept.
Of course, that's right. That's right. So that's going to apply to any given change here.
A change will do you good.
A change will do you good.
In the immortal words of Sheryl Crow.
I'm not a Sheryl Crow fan. That one went right over my head.
Oh, that's too bad. Hit the back of the wall.
Sorry.
All right, back in our heads.
Back into the Revit file. Right. If we were going to do this the long way, what we would do is, it's the end of schematic design. I would go through and now type the number 73 because it lives here in the area parameter. We'd copy over the number 2, the number 3, and I do that all the way down the list until I'm finished. Right. And of course, if this is a much larger project, that would take a whole lot of time, much longer than it would take me to do this list of, I don't know, 15 rooms or so. Right. But so instead, we're going to have Dynamo do that entire process for us. We're copying over the area parameter on the area column into our new area SD column.
Okay.
And of course, this isn't limited to areas. This is basically any parameter. I'll select one of these rooms here. Just about any parameter that shows up in the properties panel. We could read things like the upper limit, the base offset, the name of the room, like we just talked about. Anything that appears here in your properties palette, including type properties, we can use a similar process.
Cool.
So hopping back over to our schedule, and I'm going to fire up Dynamo from the Manage tab. Again, if you're using Revit 2016 or earlier, you're still going to find Dynamo in the Add-ins tab instead of Manage. We'll do a brand new workspace. The first thing that we really want to do is have Dynamo look at all of these rooms. Then we're going to have Dynamo read the area parameter and then copy it, whatever those values are, into the new area SD parameter. So those are kind of the 3 steps that we're going to follow here. Step 1, I'll open up our Revit section of the node library. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to select Revit elements that already exist in our project. And there are a couple different methods of doing that. We could, if we want to, we could kind of hand pick a model element or a room element. We could do a big selection over all of the rooms at once and probably pick up some walls and floors and things by accident too. But we also have these automatic ways of selecting a whole bunch of elements in a more methodical way. So what we're interested in here is we want to grab all of the elements of the room category in the entire project in one shot. So all elements of category is a good node for us here. You can see it's not doing anything yet because we have an input on the left that it's asking for. It's asking what Revit category are you interested in grabbing all of the elements of.
Okay.
So just a few rows down from that node is the categories node. And this node has a pull-down menu of all of the Revit categories that are even possible. So I'll scroll down here. We want to grab all of the rooms in our project. So I'll select rooms and plug it into the category input. And you can tell that the data type is consistent here because the output of this node is a category, the input of this node is a category. So chances are that's going to work exactly the way that we want it to. And you can see that this node is darkened a little bit, which means it's getting the data that it asked for, and it probably ran.
Right.
So in order to see the data that's coming out of the all elements of category node, to see what elements are actually coming out of that node, I'm going to drop in a watch node. So I'm going to search for a watch node, which is a good way of visualizing information. So once we plug that output in, you could see we have a list of index 13, 14 total room objects. And we could tell that it's not just the word room. These aren't just strings of text like we've talked about in another video. We can tell that these are actually Revit objects because to the right of them is this green highlighted element ID number. So that's how you can tell that these are Revit objects as opposed to just the word room 14 times.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to push that watch node out of the way for a second. We've been able to pull all of the rooms in the entire project into Dynamo at this point. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to ask all of these rooms what their areas are. And so this is the part where we start to read parameter values. So we're done with the Revit selection. Now we're moving on. Under the elements category of the Revit library are a whole bunch of other subcategories. A lot of the nodes that relate to kind of generally most or all Revit elements you could find under the element subcategory. So we're under Revit elements element. And here's a node that will allow us to get parameter values by name, which means first we tell this node which elements we're interested in reading parameter information from. So that's obviously our list of rooms that we've gathered. And now this is the part where we specify the parameter name. So what's the name of the parameter that we want to be able to read off of these room objects? So again, any property that shows up in the properties palette for a Revit element is fair game here. So we could read things like the name, we could read the numbers. In this case, we're interested in seeing what the areas are. So let's head back over to Dynamo. If I hover over the parameter name, we define what that parameter is by entering a string. You can see in that flyout, the last word there in the preview is string. So again, a string is a string of text. It's text that we could type and feed to this parameter name, and that's what's going to tell Dynamo which Revit parameter we're interested in reading. We can type in the parameter called area, and I'll go ahead and plug that into our parameter name input. And instead of another watch node, I'm just going to hover over. We can see our node preview. I'm going to pin it down, and you can see we got this list of numbers, which you might recognize from our schedule as areas. We can compare the numbers coming out of that node to what's in our schedule, and it looks like, yeah, we've got a 73 versus a 72 is at index 7 here. If we really want to trust that this is our list of areas, instead of reading the area parameter, let's just for a second, let's read the name parameter.
Oh, look
now
at
you can
that.
see we read a different list of information off of the same elements, right? So now we're looking at any parameter value off of this list of rooms. So you can see master bedroom, master bath, bath, bedroom. They're in a different order from this Revit schedule that we're reading off of, but that's okay. What we can be confident about is that the order of these room elements, so index 0 of this room elements, corresponds to index 0 of this list of parameter information. So these two lists are in the same order, and that's what's most important to us. We're not too worried about the actual Revit schedule object here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it looks like they put them in the order that you created them because they're in element ID order. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
And then we sorted our room schedule by number, and so our room schedule is in a different order because we sorted it by number.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly
So that's
right.
no
Now,
big
if we
deal.
wanted to, we could use more nodes that'll reorder any of these lists according to what we want, but that's not really important to this exercise.
Correct.
So we've been able to read our, right now we're reading the names. Let's switch back over to the area parameter is what we're really interested in reading here. And now we're back to a list of number values instead of text strings. Our next step, now that we've been able to read these area parameters, now we want to write those parameters, the parameter values, to the area SD parameter that we created a few minutes ago. So I'm going to go ahead and here in Dynamo, I'm going to close out my search here. We don't just have this get parameter value, we also can set parameters by name. So there's another node here in the same section of the node library. I'll drop one of those in. I'll kind of move these out of the way for a second. And you can see the inputs are almost identical to the get parameter value, except we have one more. First is we want to specify which elements we're about to change the parameter values of. So again, it's the same list of rooms in the same order that we had before. So that's an easy connection to make there. The parameter name, instead of area, we're going to use area SD, because that's the schematic design area in our project. So I'll copy that string over. I just clicked on it and then hit Control C and Control V on my keyboard in order to copy that string. I'll add SD to the end of that parameter name, and we could plug that in. And the last input that this node is asking for is what values do we want to write?
Okay.
So we already read the values off the existing area parameters.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead. Well, this is when I do my split screen to see
Right.
the Dynamo magic happen
This is,
right inside of
we'll
Revit
call
here.
this the dramatic split.
Yes, this is when we test the moment of truth
Uh-huh.
is about to happen. So if everything worked according to plan,
Mm-hmm.
we should see this column fill up with the area values. So I'm going to go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
cross my fingers. You can't see it, but I'm crossing my fingers over here,
Uh-huh.
and I'll click on value,
Look at that.
and terrific.
Terrific. That's
We've
because
got
it was set to automatic too at the bottom.
exactly right. So I
Right.
don't know if we've talked about this in another video. This is your execution bar is what this is called.
Mm-hmm.
So we can decide does Dynamo run our workflow every time that we make a change to
Mm-hmm.
the graph, or if we want to use manual, I'll switch it
Right.
back to manual for a second. It gives us a run button, which means we
That's
could make whatever changes we want to the script, and
mm-hmm.
it'll only run when we hit the run button.
That's great. All right. I'm ready.
All
Let's
right,
go for it.
excellent. So let's see. We've got our we've got our areas have been copy pasted from the area to the area SD
Oh,
parameter. Yeah, now's a good point for us to switch
let's
screens,
make a
and you could give that a
change.
try too.
Let's make a change first and see what happens.
Sure. Okay. So I'll head back over to our level 1 plan. So right, the way that
Okay.
this is now supposed to work is I don't know if we're about to spend a couple weeks continuing work on
Right.
the project. I'm sure areas are going to change.
Imagine if you will.
Imagine if you right, it's
Yeah.
we're in the future,
Uh-huh.
and our client wants a larger kitchen and dining room.
Right.
Um, So we'll can drag that wall over.
Mm-hmm.
Consequently, they also want a shorter living room and a larger
Right.
laundry room, I guess.
Well, you never can
Interesting
have too
decision there.
small of a laundry room.
That's probably true.
Never can have too large of a laundry room. All right, let's see what happened to the schedule.
All right, hopping back over to our schedule.
And look at that.
All right, it looks like our kitchen and dining is grown since
Uh-huh.
schematic design.
Our
Our
laundry
laundry room is
grown.
also grown.
Uh-huh. Our
hmm
hallway
And it
shrunk.
looks like we have a couple. Yeah, it looks like we have a couple spaces on the second
Oh,
floor that
look at that.
even expanded.
That's quite. Look at that. The master bathroom got smaller.
Oh yeah, well, that's what happens when you want a larger living space, I guess. Well, in this particular project, I don't see why we couldn't have just made everything bigger, but
Right.
I don't know if the client's under a tight space constraint, if something
Right.
grows, something needs to shrink. So it looks like we
Yeah,
didn't
so
realize it at the time, but just by pulling that curtain wall out, it also
right.
extended
The second floor
that
wall
second
too.
floor wall too.
Right. Interesting.
So, all right. And of course, if we wanted now to capture another snapshot in time, maybe we're at 50% design development,
Mm-hmm.
we could create another parameter for 50% DD, and we could
Mm-hmm.
run our workflow that we created back at the end of 100% SD again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the benefits of writing these Dynamo scripts is that it's a workflow that you could run again either on other projects around the office, or maybe it's a script that you run only on your one project. You know that you'll need to run it at multiple times during the project in the future. So that's usually a good way to determine, is this worth writing a Dynamo script?
Right. Okay. Let me try it. So I've gone ahead and created the extra little guy here, the parameter. I need to check my parameter though, because I have realized that I probably didn't select area type for my parameter. So let me. Oh, it doesn't
Oh
let
yeah, you'll
me
get a
change
list
the
of
type. Right.
links.
And it won't let me change that. So I need to get rid of that one. So we will delete that. And we'll add another
Off the
new
top
one.
of my head, I can't think of a way for Dynamo to be able to correct that. As a general rule of thumb, anything that you can't do in Revit, you also can't do when you're using Dynamo. Dynamo can automate things that you can already do in Revit, but I don't know, you can't really break rules that Revit imposes using
Right.
Dynamo.
Discipline, comma. And we want this to be what? Data? Is that what we said?
I put it under data.
And okay, so now I've got that done. And we got that there. Fantastic.
Excellent.
We're ready to jump to Dynamo from the not the modify, the manage. And we'll jump to Dynamo. And we'll go into Dynamo 1.2. And we'll scoot this over here and make this a little bit larger over here. And we'll do a new one. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and keep that area up over there. And I'm looking at my notes. And the first thing we have to do is select all of our rooms. So we'll go to Revit and we'll go to Selection. And we want to select elements by category. By category.
That's
So
right.
I'll pop that in there. And the category is a category, and there's categories right there. And we will select our rooms. I hit the R key. Rooms. Not roofs.
I always stop at roofs. It's so close,
I do
but
too. Isn't
gotta
that
scroll
weird?
down. All right.
All right, so now we've selected our rooms, and we're going to add that watchy thing. There's our watch. And we'll do that. And there's all our rooms, all 14 of them. Which is great.
Excellent.
All right,
Yep.
so now we've done that. So now we've gotten the rooms out of there. Now we need to get the parameter out of there.
That's right.
So we'll go back to Revit. So I'll close my search. And we'll go to Elements. And from Elements, we'll go to Element. And from Element, we'll get parameter by name. So we'll scroll down and we'll get parameter by name.
And that's right. Can I stop you here for just a second?
Sure.
So in our last video, I forget if it was I don't know, in a previous episode of Dynamo Thoughts, we had a conversation about when you sit down to write a Dynamo script at the beginning,
Right.
it's possible that you won't know what inputs you need to start with. So if you kind of decided, all right, well, I know that I need to read parameters from some Revit elements, but I'm not sure what I need to set up all the way on the left side of my graph. It's totally okay to find this node. A lot of people might start here. I know that I want to get parameter values. Oh, I see that I need to specify Revit elements and a parameter name. And then you could kind of work to the left from there. You could select your elements any way that you need to. So if you didn't, I don't know, if you're a viewer at home and you didn't have the kind of intuition to think, all right, I need to start this script by collecting all of the room objects in my Revit project, that's okay. This is kind of where you would be prompted to do that. The order doesn't necessarily matter.
Right. Excellent point. All right. So I got my element.
Yeah, back to you, Bill.
Back to me. Parameter name. What is that? That's a string. So we'll grab a string. And we'll pop that in. Oh, we got two strings, but that's all right. I'm going to need that one later.
Yeah.
And we need area.
That's right.
And it is case sensitive. And it's spelling sensitive.
Yeah, if you want to see what happens if we... it's okay to see what happens when we misspell a node.
Oh, okay, well, let's misspell a node then. Nothing.
Man, you were way off.
Oh, man, look at that. I hit the caps lock key. All right, so I got the area. I got the area and the parameter. And the var is a list. Oh, and I can click there. It shows me all of my... Oh, I don't have any areas. Oh, that's because I have an enter down here.
There you go. Yep.
Uh-huh. And there's 14. There's all my areas.
There we are.
Yay,
Yeah, if you
I
click
hit
that pin icon, that'll leave your node preview pulled down.
Right, cool. So there's that. So now we've got our areas. Now we need to set those. And that was down in here under set parameter by name. And my value, let's see, my elements are going to be these guys. Same elements.
Yep, your list of rooms,
My
right?
parameter name is a string. So my parameter name is going to be my area SD, because that's what I call my new field. And that's there.
And of course, we could have named that whatever we wanted to. We just need to make sure that that matches whatever's in Revit.
And then the value needs to be this guy. That goes in there. Even though I'm crossing the streams, it's okay to cross streams.
That's okay.
And look at that. It did its thing.
And all right.
All right. I did it. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
This is one of the scripts that's easy, fast, and useful. Easy, fast, because you always need it to be easy, fast, and useful. Otherwise, why do Dynamo, right?
I don't know that it's always easy or always fast. It's always I don't know. When it works, it's always super satisfying. That's for
It
sure.
is super satisfying. I thought this was going to be a hard one to do, to be honest with you. And it isn't. It's pretty easy.
You'll find that sometimes the scripts that you think are going to be really difficult turn out to be much simpler once you kind of break down the elements that need to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the things that actually do kind of things that you think would be really easy
Mm-hmm.
actually take a lot more effort and many more nodes than this
Right.
does. And I'm not really sure how to what the reason for that is, but
Okay.
yeah, this is one of those especially quick ones that is super effective. And like I said before, this technique is fundamental if you're going to be proficient in Dynamo for Revit. You will definitely be reading parameter values. You will likely be writing parameter values. If you want to drive geometry using, this is basically how you can use Dynamo to really kind of build up a Revit model or make modifications
Yeah.
or import and export information in your BIM environment from one platform to another. Maybe in
Mm-hmm.
another video we could talk about how you pull information in from Excel or how you would write
Oh,
this out
yeah.
to Excel.
That would be great too.
Basically, BIM doesn't necessarily equal Revit. Is this conversation that's been going on for a while?
Right.
Just
Right.
because it's Revit doesn't mean it's BIM. It's very possible that you have information that lives in other
Mm-hmm.
places on your server that are related to the project, and this is a way that you can extend that Revit functionality outside of your Revit file out to those other, call them BIM formats,
Mm-hmm.
even though they're really just Excel or Word or something like that.
Right. Those are all the eyes in BIM. So this is fantastic. Thank you,
That's
Ian, for
right.
showing me this. And I'm sure everyone that's watching this video is saying thank you, Ian, as well.
You are all welcome.
Go ahead and leave us comments on the video page in YouTube down below there. And let us know how you like this, if you think it's going to be useful. And then also give us some ideas for some more Dynamo scripts you'd like to run. These are great
Hmm.
examples of things that are easy, fast, and effective. So those are the kind of things that we're all interested in as well. As you were talking and filling in those areas by manually there, I was thinking, hey, that's an intern's job. So that's another way to think of this as well. If it's an intern job, then by golly, we should be able to get Dynamo to do it as well.
That's right. Thanks everybody for watching.
Yep. Thank you for watching. And Ian, where can they find you on these interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at Ian_Siegel
Mm-hmm.
or on
That's
lynda.com.
right.
We'll include a link to the Dynamo videos in the show notes.
That's right. And you got a whole new series coming up soon. Of course, by the time somebody sees this as well, already be out at lynda.com. So make sure you check out both of his courses on Lynda. Thank you, Ian.
Of course, you're welcome. Bye, everybody.